make some decisions about, okay, so what are the types of materials we have here? What makes sense to organize it? So that ends up being the series, which are like chapters in a book. And they can be kind of arbitrary. It just has to do with breaking things up into manageable pieces based on types. So administration, audiovisual, buildings and grounds, commencement, course catalogs, events, programs, handbooks. I use what archivists call functional provenance, meaning I'm not as concerned, I know where it came from and who created it. I need to know what function the material had. What was the purpose of the yearbook? What was the function of this particular group of files? And that informs how I arrange things, making decisions. I don't know what, I don't care necessarily what department the files came from. I need to know, are they administrative? Are they curricular based, et cetera? And so that ends up being the series list here. Publications, newspapers, et cetera. And then we essentially, every folder gets a unique, most of the time every folder gets a unique name. Sometimes we group things together in folders, but every folder gets a name and then it's placed in a box. So I can go to this entire collection and say, oh, I want the Becker log from 1969. That's in box 2, it's item 16. I can go to box 2 to find item 16. So essentially, every folder in the collection, and this is like 30 some boxes, can be identified using this. And if I separate anything out, I know where it goes because the folder has the title of the material inside of it, the name of the collection, the box number, and the folder number.
Cool.
So it
Nice.
keeps things from getting separated. So it sort of ends up replicating the way that a structured book works, except this entire collection instead of just a book.
Yeah.
I am deeply grateful for the fact that I had a graduate assistant who did the bulk of this work. She's the one who went through hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of Becker journals, grouped them together chronologically, put them in folders, identified the folders. I would never have had time to do this. And part of why I think Nancy was so extraordinary in what she was able to do is she had to do this work by herself part-time.
Right. Right.
And it's very, very time intensive. But as you can see, this is good forever. They're an acid-free material, acid-free boxes, acid-free folders, and anyone can come in and use this collection. It doesn't have to be me. There's a very logical kind of organization behind it. So, but this was a bear of a project. It really was intense. I enjoyed it, but it was a lot of work. Oh, and here's our graduation commencement exercise from 1895. It's one of the very early ones. And part of why these are great is they tell you not just who spoke at the program, but who the graduates were. So if you're saying, oh, when did my great-grandmother graduate? You can look her up in these and see when she graduated. Class history. Class prophecy, that's an interesting one.
Class prophecy.
J.A. Pearson.
Essay. I would love to know what the prophecy was.
I know. There might be a record of it somewhere. Essay, No Excellence Without Labor and Valedictory. A. Matty Jones. It's also co-ed. Let's remember, this was a time when men and women didn't socialize very often. I mean, it was 50 years before this, there were people that didn't like seeing boys and girls in the same classrooms together. And so the idea of men and women occupying the same classrooms, and of course the faculty tended to be male, the administrators often were, but if you look at the really early materials, Mrs. Becker, because after he died, she was I believe she led the helm for a while.
Did you get the photo of her in the frame, by the way?
I think I have that. Yeah,
Okay.
I know if it's somewhere upstairs in the collection.
Because Nancy was talking about that one time.
I'm fairly certain I have that upstairs. I'll have to double check and see. But that doesn't register with us today, that it was a big deal. But I think it was kind of for business classes. You see men and women in the same classroom together. And this was the era when the Ivies were all closed to women, and women's colleges were just getting off the ground. So normal schools and business colleges were the only places you tended to see men and women attending college together. Penmanship classes, because remember, you had to know how to write. When you were keeping ledger books by hand, your handwriting had to be legible. You had to know how to file properly.
I think millennials were the last to learn penmanship, because I learned it in like 4th grade.
This is a specimen of script as taught in this school. It is used in making ledger readings and also used a great deal in indexing.
Mm-hmm.
Sports, basketball team,
Mm-hmm.
baseball team, location, testimonials, and this was the important part of the book because it's these are all the businesses in Worcester and the region who rave about Becker graduates.
Oh, that's incredible.
And that was a huge part of selling the school because ultimately this was a practical degree. This wasn't about, liberal arts necessarily. This was about learning how to do practical things, learning how to run a business, learning how to work in a business. The following list of our graduates who are in good positions will give an idea of the use Becker Business College students have made of their business training. And so we have a list of all of the students and what they did. Stenographers, president of Trenton Iron Works, that's a big deal, Harry Stoddard. Manufacturing optician, manager of clerks. And back when Worcester was kind of the center of industry in this part of New England, this was a big deal. They were pipelined directly from Becker out into the factories in town. So he was a pretty sharp guy. I mean,